Well, settle in, my dear, and let me pour us both a fresh cup of tea. I've been chronicling the tangled, often treacherous webs of family dynamics for more years than I care to count, and I can promise you, the story I'm about to share is one for the ages. There is a specific kind of poison that runs through the veins of people who think their bank accounts make them better than the rest of us. But as we are about to see, pride doesn't just go before a fall, sometimes it takes the whole empire down with it. Part 1: The Gilding of the Cage. I never imagined that the exact moment I realized my marriage was a farce would happen while I was surrounded by 300 of the city's most elite socialites, wearing a silk gown that cost more than my first car. But there I was, standing under the blinding glare of crystal chandeliers at my own 30th birthday gala, watching Julian, my husband of exactly 2 years, throw his handsome head back and chuckle. He wasn't laughing at a clever toast. He wasn't laughing at a shared, loving memory. He was laughing because his father, Arthur Sterling, a man drunk on single malt scotch and his own perceived superiority, had just called my father up to the stage. Arthur hadn't handed my dad a gift. He had handed him a dirty, damp string mop. The Sterlings always take care of the help. Arthur had boomed into the microphone. The grand ballroom went dead silent. It was that terrible, suffocating silence where you can hear the ice clinking against the glass. But Julian didn't freeze. He chuckled. That soft, complicit sound of amusement told me everything I had spent 2 years refusing to see. He agreed with them. He thought my father was a joke. If you are watching this video, tell me in the comments where you're from or what time it is for you right now. Just a single word lets me know you're here with me. 3 months before that terrible night, I was standing in my kitchen, running my hands over the smooth, warm grain of my dining room table. I was a girl who grew up smelling of sawdust and motor oil. My father, Sam, was a quiet, sturdy man with calloused hands who drove an ancient, rattling Ford pickup. He was a mechanic, a carpenter, a man who worked with his hands and spoke only when he had something worth saying. When Julian and I bought our first house, a lovely, albeit modest, colonial in a respectable suburb, my father had spent 3 months hand-carving that oak dining table for us as a housewarming gift. It was beautiful, rich with character, and easily the most treasured thing I owned. Julian, on the other hand, came from the Sterlings. The Sterling family name was practically stamped on the bricks of the financial district. His mother, Beatrice, was a woman whose spine was made of steel and whose heart, I was beginning to suspect, was made of pure frost. They were old money real estate developers, the kind of people who summered in places you couldn't find on a regular map. It's just very rustic, isn't it? Beatrice had said the first time she walked into our home, her eyes instantly locking onto my father's table. She didn't remove her designer coat. She stood in the center of the room, sipping a sparkling water she had brought herself, surveying my life like a building inspector, looking for code violations. It dominates the room, Maya. It's heavy. It lacks elevation. I had straightened my spine, trying to force a polite smile. My dad made it, Beatrice. Every joint is dovetailed by hand. It means the world to me. We're just trying to help you transition, dear, she said, her voice dripping with that poisonous sweetness wealthy women use when they want to eviscerate you, without leaving a visible mark. You're a Sterling now. You're approaching your 30th birthday. It's a milestone. Arthur and I want to throw you a proper gala to celebrate, but we also need to ensure your home reflects your new standing. When we entertain clients here, we can't have them eating off a lumberjack's workbench. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. I wanted to scream that I didn't care about their clients, that I loved my lumberjack father, and that the table was staying. But I didn't. I looked at Julian, who was leaning against the doorframe, scrolling through his phone. "Julian," I prompted, my voice sounding thin and childish. "Tell her we love the table." Julian finally looked up, offering that easy, symmetrical smile that came from a lifetime of never having to fight for anything. "Mom has a point, Maya. It's a bit bulky. Dad's architecture firm has a sleek, glass and steel piece in storage. Very modern. It would open up the space beautifully. We want to look polished, right? For the partners." Polished. There it was, the buzzword that had become the soundtrack of my marriage. It wasn't about what I loved. It was about the Sterling brand. The next day, while I was at work, I received a text from my housekeeper. Beatrice had stopped by with some movers. When I came home, my father's beautiful, handcrafted oak table was gone, shoved unceremoniously into the dusty corner of our garage. Covered by a cheap plastic tarp, in its place stood a cold, sharp-edged glass monstrosity that looked like an operating table. I sat in the middle of the kitchen floor and cried. When Julian came home, he stepped over me to get a beer from the fridge. "Babe, why are you on the floor, and why are you crying over a piece of wood?" "Mom did us a favor. That glass piece is worth 10 grand. She banished my father's gift to the garage, Julian. She invaded my home." He sighed, the sound of a patient parent explaining basic math to a toddler. "You're being sensitive, Maya. She's throwing you a massive birthday gala. She's spending 6 figures to celebrate you. Can't you just cut her some slack and accept the upgrade? It's about respecting the lifestyle." Respect. That word tasted like ash in my mouth. I wanted to ask if respect went both ways, but the heavy, gray exhaustion of fighting the Sterlings settled over me. I told myself it was just a table. I told myself I was being dramatic. That was the magic trick they pulled, day after day. They chipped away at my identity, and Julian convinced me I was the one holding the hammer. 2 weeks before the gala, Beatrice hosted a planning brunch at the Ashford Country Club. She had insisted my father attend, so they could coordinate logistics. I drove to the club early, my stomach in tight knots. My dad arrived 15 minutes later. I watched from the terrace as his old, rusted blue pickup truck rattled up the pristine, manicured driveway, taking its place in a valet line of Porsches and Mercedes. He stepped out, wearing a clean, perfectly pressed plaid flannel shirt, and his best dark jeans. To me, he looked handsome, sturdy, and real. Beatrice, standing next to me on the terrace, made a soft, sharp sound in the back of her throat. It was the sound you make when you step in something foul. "Good heavens," she muttered. "Is he intentionally trying to be an eyesore? He's a mechanic, Beatrice." "That's his truck," I said, my voice tight. By the time my dad walked up the grand stone steps, Beatrice was already waiting for him, her fake smile plastered on her face. "Sam," she exclaimed, not offering her hand, "so glad you could find the place. Though, I must ask, could you perhaps have the valet move your vehicle around to the delivery entrance in the back? The club has strict aesthetic guidelines for the front drive, and we wouldn't want the board members to complain." I felt a wave of hot shame wash over me, followed instantly by a wave of violent self-loathing for feeling ashamed. My father had rebuilt that truck with his own 2 hands. He had driven me to my high school graduation in that truck. He looked at Beatrice, then out to the driveway, and finally at me. His eyes were calm, but I saw the microscopic tightening of his jaw. "Of course, Mrs. Sterling," he said quietly. His voice was steady, like deep water. "I wouldn't want to ruin the view." He turned and walked back down the stairs to move his truck to the service lot. I wanted to run after him. I wanted to grab his calloused hand and drag him away from these awful people. But Julian came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "See," He doesn't mind, Julian whispered in my ear. Mom just likes things orderly. He gets it. I stood there, trapped in Julian's embrace, letting them steamroll the man who gave me everything. I was trading my backbone for a country club membership I didn't even want. During the brunch, Beatrice dominated the conversation, dictating the flowers, the menu, and the guest list for my birthday. She treated my father not as a guest of honor, but as a mildly slow-witted child who needed to be managed. Now, Sam, she said, tapping her manicured nail on the linen tablecloth. For the gala, the dress code is strictly black tie. We have a tailor who can fit you. For a tuxedo, we'll handle the bill. Naturally, we just can't have you showing up in whatever it is you usually wear. My dad took a slow sip of his black coffee. I own a suit, Beatrice. A suit is not a tuxedo, Sam, she corrected, her voice hardening. This is a high society event. The mayor will be there. Arthur's investors will be there. Cohesion is key. We are trying to present a united front. It wasn't about my birthday. It was a networking event, a show of force for sterling real estate, and my father was a scuffed shoe they were desperately trying to polish before the guests arrived. The final blow before the party came just 3 days prior. The doorbell rang at 10 in the morning, echoing through the cavernous foyer of our home. I opened it to find Arthur Sterling filling the doorframe. He was a large, ruddy-faced man who always smelled of expensive cigars and intimidation. He pushed past me without waiting for an invitation, carrying a thick leather briefcase. Maya, good, you're home, he boomed, dropping the briefcase onto the new glass dining table with a heavy thud. Julian around. He's at the office, Arthur, I said, pulling my cardigan tighter. Can I help you? Just need a quick signature, Arthur said, pulling out a stack of dense legal documents. We overlooked this before the wedding, and with Julian taking on a larger role in the firm next month, the lawyers insisted we clean house. Standard postnuptial agreement. I stared at the thick stack of paper. A postnup, Julian and I never discussed this. Julian leaves the business side to me, Arthur said, waving his hand dismissively. It's boilerplate, sweetheart. It just clearly defines the Sterling family assets. My father built this empire. I expanded it. Julian will inherit it. We have to protect the bloodline's interests. You know how it is. People see a wealthy family, and they see a lottery ticket. He paused, flashing a wide, chilling smile. Not you, of course. We know you love our boy, so signing this is just a formality. If you're here for love, the money doesn't matter, right? It was a perfectly set verbal bear trap. If I refused, I was a gold digger. If I signed, I was signing away my security. I scanned the first page. It stated that in the event of a divorce, I would leave with absolutely nothing. No alimony. No equity in the house, nothing. I would be erased. Arthur, I really think I should have a lawyer. Look at this, I stammered, my hands trembling. Arthur stopped smiling. He looked at me with cold, watery blue eyes, treating me the way one might treat a broken vending machine. A lawyer. Maya, honey, we are throwing you a $100,000 party in 3 days. We have senators flying in. You want to hold up the family progress over some legal mumbo-jumbo. Don't be difficult. Sign the paper so we can get back to celebrating you. I thought about my father's table banished to the garage. I thought about the rusted truck hidden in the service lot. I was small, I was powerless, and I was terrified that if I said no, my entire life would implode. So, with a shaking hand, I took his heavy gold pen and signed my name. Good girl, Arthur said, snatching the papers back before the ink was even dry. Welcome to the real family. When Julian came home, I told him what happened. I was in tears, expecting him to be outraged that his father had ambushed me. Instead, Julian just shrugged off his suit jacket. Babe, it's just a piece of paper. Dad's just paranoid about the firm's liabilities. It doesn't mean anything between us. Why are you always trying to find a reason to be mad at my parents? They're giving you the party of a lifetime. I sat on our cold, beige sofa, staring at my husband, realizing I was entirely alone in my own marriage. But the worst, my friends, was yet to come. Part 2, The House of Cards. The night of the gala arrived like a storm cloud. The ballroom at the Ashford Club was a cavern of marble, gold leaf, and thousands of suffocating white lilies. I had spent 3 hours in a chair, being painted, pinned, and prodded by a team of stylists Beatrice had hired. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see Maya Vance. I saw a contoured, perfectly lacquered doll, designed to stand quietly next to Julian Sterling. As the guests began to arrive, a sea of designer tuxedos, glittering diamonds, and faces I only recognized from local business magazines, I desperately searched for my father. I hadn't seen him since he arrived. Julian and I were paraded around the room, posing for photographers, shaking hands with politicians. Smile, Maya, Julian hissed through his teeth during the 50th photo. You look like you're at a funeral. The mayor is looking at us. I forced the corners of my mouth up, but my eyes were scanning the room. Finally, just as the first course was being served, I slipped away from the head table. I walked past the VIP section, past Julian's college friends, past Beatrice's bridge club. I walked all the way to the back of the massive ballroom, near the swinging wooden doors that led to the kitchen. There, tucked behind a massive, melting swan ice sculpture that completely blocked his view of the stage, was table 24. It was a tiny table, unevenly set, catching the blast of hot air and the clatter of dishes. Every time a waiter kicked the kitchen doors open, and sitting there, completely alone, in his rented tuxedo that didn't quite fit right, across his broad shoulders, was my father. My heart physically ached. Dad, I breathed, walking up to him. He looked up, a warm, genuine smile breaking across his weathered face. There's the birthday girl. You look beautiful, Maya, like a movie star. Dad, why are you sitting here? I told the planner to put you at table 2, right up front. He gently patted my hand. It's all right, sweetheart. Mrs. Sterling said they needed the front tables for some important clients. I don't mind. I've got a great view of the... Well, the ice swan is very nice craftsmanship. He was trying to joke. He was sitting in the shadows, hidden away like a dirty secret, and he was still trying to protect me. I'm going to kill them, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. Maya, no, my dad said, his voice firming up. Tonight is about you. Go back to your table. Hold your head up. We know who we are, and we don't need their front row seats to prove it. Reluctantly, I walked back to the head table. The dinner service felt like it lasted a century, and then the music faded, and Arthur Sterling stood up, tapping his spoon against his crystal champagne flute. The room fell into an obedient hush. Friends, colleagues, distinguished guests, Arthur began, his voice booming over the sound system. He was swaying slightly, his face red with expensive liquor. We are here tonight to celebrate my lovely daughter-in-law, Maya. Turning 30 is a milestone. But more importantly, tonight is a celebration of the Sterling family's commitment to growth. He didn't look at me. He looked at his investors. You see, the Sterlings have always believed in building things up. My son, Julian, is the future of our firm. He has the pedigree, the education, the Sterling bloodline, and when he chose Maya, we knew we had a bit of a project on our hands. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter washed through the room. I froze, my blood running ice cold. Beside me, Julian was smiling tightly. We took her in. Arthur continued. swirling his scotch. We gave her a life she couldn't have dreamed of, because that's what we do. We elevate. And speaking of where she came from, Arthur shielded his eyes, looking toward the back of the room. Is Sam out there? Sam, come on up here. Every head in the room turned toward the kitchen doors. My father, looking confused but dignified, slowly stood up and walked down the long aisle toward the stage. The silence in the room was heavy, oppressive. When my dad reached the stage, Arthur threw a heavy arm around his shoulders. Folks, this is Sam. Arthur slurred into the mic. Sam is a mechanic. He works with his hands. He gets dirty so people like us don't have to. Arthur laughed. A cruel, barking sound. Now, we Sterlings believe in taking care of the people who serve us. The working class. The peasants, if you will. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Someone dropped a fork. Arthur snapped his fingers at a waiter, who walked forward holding something long and awkward. Arthur took it and shoved it into my father's hands. It was a dirty, wet string mop. Then Arthur pulled a crisp $100 bill from his pocket and stuffed it into my dad's front pocket. A little something for the effort, Sam, Arthur sneered. Just in case there's a spill in the kitchen later. The Sterlings always take care of the help. I couldn't breathe. The humiliation was so thick it was suffocating. I looked at Julian. This was the moment. His father had just publicly degraded my dad, called him a peasant, and handed him a mop as a joke. If Julian loved me, he would stand up. Take the mic and end this. Julian looked at his father. Then he looked at his friends at the VIP table. And then Julian chuckled. It was a full-throated, genuine laugh. He threw his head back. He was signaling to the room that it was a joke, that he agreed with his father. That laugh was the sound of my marriage dying. The fear, the desperate need to please these people, the exhaustion. It all shattered in an instant, replaced by a cold, blinding clarity. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. Maya, sit down, Julian hissed, grabbing for my wrist. I yanked my arm away. I reached up, unclasped the heavy diamond necklace Beatrice had forced me to wear, and threw it, hitting Julian squarely in the chest. It clattered onto his dinner plate. Don't ever touch me again, I said, my voice eerily calm. I walked past him, up the stairs to the stage. Arthur looked surprised as I marched up to him and ripped the microphone from his hand. I turned to the crowd of 300 elite guests. This party is over, I announced. The speakers boomed, amplifying my rage. I will not spend another second pretending to be part of a family that mistakes cruelty for class. Julian, we are done. Maya, you're making a scene. You're drunk, Julian yelled, standing up, his face pale. I have never been more sober. In my entire life, I fired back. I turned to my father. Come on, Dad, let's leave these people to their miserable, hollow lives. But my dad didn't move. He wasn't looking at the floor. He wasn't humiliated. He was standing tall, holding the mop in one hand, and with the other, he calmly pulled the $100 bill out of his pocket. He looked at it, then dropped it onto the floor. Hold on a minute, Maya, my dad said. His voice was quiet, but it carried an authority I had never heard before. He reached out and took the microphone from my hand. He turned to Arthur, who was glaring at him. Arthur, my dad said smoothly, you've spent this entire evening talking about real estate, about empires, about who owns what. Get off my stage, you grease monkey. Arthur spat, stepping forward. My name, my dad said, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings, is not just Sam the mechanic, though I am proud of the calluses on my hands. My full name is Samuel Vance. I am the founder and sole owner of Vance Development Holdings. The ballroom went terrifyingly silent, the kind of silence that happens right before a bomb detonates. Arthur stopped dead in his tracks. The color drained from his face so fast, he looked like a corpse. Beatrice, sitting at the head table, let out a tiny, high-pitched gasp. Even I knew what Vance Development Holdings was. They were the invisible titans of the state. They owned the commercial ports, the skyscrapers downtown, and my dad continued, his eyes locking onto Arthur like a sniper. I am the majority shareholder of the bank that currently holds the notes on your over-leveraged commercial properties. Arthur, all of them, including the ground this very country club sits on. That's a lie, Arthur stammered, his bravado entirely gone. Vance is a recluse. Nobody knows what he looks like. I like my privacy, my dad said simply, and I wanted my daughter to be loved for who she is, not what she inherits. I watched you for 2 years. Arthur, I watched you treat my girl like an accessory. I watched you banish my handiwork to a garage. I kept quiet because she asked me to, but handing me a mop. My dad chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that made Arthur flinch. That was a tactical error. My dad pulled an old, scuffed cell phone from his pocket. He dialed a number and put it on speaker, holding it to the microphone. The phone rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. Vance Holdings, legal department. Martin, it's Sam, my dad said. Execute the contingency plan on the Sterling accounts. Call in the loans on the Downtown Plaza project. All of them, effective immediately. They're in breach of their liquidity covenants. Understood, Mr. Vance. Initiating now, the voice replied. My dad hung up. He looked at Arthur, who was now clutching his chest, panting heavily. You have 30 days to find $60 million in cash, Arthur, or I will foreclose on your entire firm. And sell it for parts. You want to talk about the help. You work for me now. He turned his gaze to Julian, who was standing at the table, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. And as for you, boy, you laughed at me. You let them abuse my daughter. The postnuptial agreement you forced her to sign. It goes both ways. She leaves with nothing of yours, but you get absolutely nothing of hers, which, as of tomorrow, is a trust fund worth more than your father's entire bloodline. My dad gently set the mop against Arthur's chest, forcing the stunned man to hold it. Clean up your own mess, Arthur. You're going to need the practice. My dad put his arm around my shoulders. The scary, billionaire titan vanished, and he was just my dad again. Ready to go, sweetheart? I've never been more ready, I said. We walked down the center aisle of the ballroom. Nobody said a word. The crowd parted for us like the Red Sea. Behind us, I could hear Beatrice sobbing hysterically and Arthur screaming into his phone. Julian just stood there, paralyzed in the ruins of his life. We walked out the front doors of the club, the valet scrambling to bring my dad's rusted blue pickup truck right to the front steps. We got in, and the engine roared to life, the sweetest sound I had ever heard. 3 months later, my life is completely unrecognizable. The annulment was swift and brutal. Julian tried to crawl back, texting me paragraphs about how he was intimidated by my father's wealth and begged for forgiveness. I didn't even reply. I just blocked his number. The Sterling empire collapsed exactly as my dad promised. Without the bank's backing, their investors fled. Arthur was forced to declare bankruptcy, and the Ashford Country Club revoked their membership because they couldn't pay the dues. I heard Julian is currently working as a mid-level leasing agent for a strip mall in a neighboring state, driving a used sedan. As for me, I moved out of that sterile house and into a gorgeous, sunlit loft downtown. In the center of my new dining room sits the beautiful, hand-carved oak table my father made for me. I quit my corporate job and started working alongside my dad, running the philanthropic arm of Vance Holdings. I'm learning the family business from the ground up, wearing jeans and flannel whenever I please. I didn't lose everything that night at the gala. I lost a cage. I gained my freedom. I got my father back, and I learned that true class isn't about what you wear or the name on your bank account. It's about how you treat people when you think no one is looking. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing to Family Shock. You can also drop a comment below, even just one word, to let me know you made it to the end.